Hello. Hi, I'm Gail Carriger. Hello. This is a video I'm doing. I know, we're off to a really good start, 2020. Right. So, welcome to the usual Facebook Live if you're tuning in on Facebook. Hi, Catherine. Welcome on YouTube if you're tuning in after the live has already ended. Thanks for finding my channel and saying hello. Leave a comment if you've got one. So today I am going to talk a little bit about my goals for 2020, both sort of personal and professional. And I'm hoping some of you are inspired or will tune in. Let me know what your goals are. Leave a comment, that sort of thing. It's a little weird for me today. If it seems a little strange, if my body positioning is odd, it's because I'm at home. And I'm at home because my brand spanking new office with my lovely little new setup for doing videos it doesn't have internet at the moment. I have the internet people coming in on Monday, so but I didn't want to move the live around. It's too confusing, so I thought I'll do it from home. But home is a little awkward, it turns out, because the playoffs are happening right now, and I'm missing my team playing. I know, sports ball, but even geeky little me occasionally tunes in for some sports once in a while. The American football, for those of you who are not up on that stuff. So I very much appreciate those of you who have tuned in and would rather be watching the game. Or are listening in and watching the game at the same time. Hi. Katie wants to know who my team is, and I'm a Niners fan. Have been since the 80s, back in the day when we had one for the thumb. Rice and Montana and the whole 9 yards, as it were. Yeah, I was a football 49ers fan from a very young age. It was one of the few things that my dad and I really bonded over. So that got me into it originally, and I never left. I like American football for a very me-ish sort of reason, though, which is it very much reminds me of Roman battle tactics with the special teams and sort of the cavalry and the infantry, and so that's kind of why I enjoy it. I enjoy the strategy of it. It really appeals to my old school archaeologist days, so that's kind of why I like it. But we aren't going to talk about that. That's not why you're here. You're here hopefully to talk about books and writing and all those things, and it is lovely to see you because honestly it's the beginning of the year and things are really slow, so I'm delighted that some of you are tuning in. I will, as always, take some of your questions at the second half of the video, but I actually prepared stuff to talk about at the beginning of this video, so yeah, shall we get to it? First things first, I promised I would talk about my releases and books that are coming out this year, which is 2020. And I have my little notebook here in which I have written them down so I don't forget. So the first thing, which I've already been talking about quite a bit publicly, is Meet Cute. So Meet Cute is the Alexia and Conall Meet Cute. And it's the Hedgehog incident, which I alluded to in the Parasol Protectorate series, and I finally wrote. It is just a short story. It's about the same length as The Curious Case of the Werewolf That Wasn't, if you want a comparison length. It also has a little sample chapter in it and stuff, so with that it works out to be about, I guess, 42 pages long. And that is just a really inconvenient length for doing a lot. It's impossible to do a print edition of something that is that length. I can produce a PDF and you could print it out. You could buy it and then print it out yourself from your computer, but that's the only real way to get a printed version of that. I genuinely looked into like the types of print companies that do pamphlet printing, like prayer books or what have you, like little tiny books that and it's just not feasible. The way you format for a PDF doesn't translate really easily to that medium. The sizes are all different. I would have to learn a whole new way to reformat. I just don't honestly have the time for that. And it's not really cost effective. It just is too expensive to print. I'd have to print like 1,000 of them and then sell them, which means I would then have to set up a system. I would warehouse them and then set up a system on my website, and then Kelly would have to trot down to the post office and mail them off. And if I offered them international, which I would have to with my current setup on my website, then she has to fill out custom forms, and it just becomes a nightmare. So it is a short story. It's not available as a printed edition on its own. However, like I did with Curious Case, it will probably end up in anthologies if I'm asked to contribute. I one day might do a collection if I have enough Parasol Protectorate short stories all together. Right now I have a number of short stories, but they're really disparate. There's no theme. So I'd want them all to be in universe or something if I were going to do a collection of my own short stories. Or it can end up packaged in the back of a novella, like I did with Curious Case. Secretly, though, the reason I put the Curious Case of the Werewolf that wasn't at the back of Romancing the Werewolf is because I had the space for it. Romancing the Werewolf is short for a novella for me, so that I had room to get the page numbers up there for the printing of that kind. So it will appear in print, it's just not going to be immediately available in print. And I'm really sorry about that, but hopefully you understand why. It's just something that length is really hard to get out as a print edition. The infrastructure is not in place on any platforms. Ty is reporting in that Ty and Frankie, two of my biggest supporters, Frankie can't make it, which is always sad, but I appreciate the reporting in. I see a lot of familiar faces, so yay, hi everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I've said it before and I'll say it again, one of the reasons I do lives is because I can reach people from all over the world. And I see a couple people have already started asking questions. If you could save your questions and then retype them when I ask for them in about 15 or 20 minutes, that would be great, because I'm doing a sort of set thing I want to talk about at the top, so that people can kind of tune in and see that, and then if they don't have a question, they can poodle off at the juncture. So, Meet Cute is the first thing that comes out. It's already available in audio. I was doing some experimentation with audio, so I released it early, I released it direct. There are lots of ways to get it for a change with my audio, so hopefully that makes you really excited. I know a lot of audiobook readers have talked to me about the fact that they're not really comfortable with things like Audible because they feel like they don't really own the product. They feel more like they're renting it with a subscription system. So you can actually buy the MP3 from me. It will get emailed to you. You can download it. It is your MP3. You can have it on your computer forever. And that's the first time I'm experimenting with that. And you can do that for Meet Cute only right now, and you can do it off of my website if you want to go check that out. So that's Meet Cute. The other thing that's coming out kind of right now or soon, I'm not entirely sure on the exact date, is the paperback edition of Reticence in the United States. So if you're outside of the United States, you got it originally in paperback. There was no hardback. But if you're in the US, it came out first last summer in hardback. And now in February, it will be out in mass market paperback. Or not mass market, sorry, trade paperback. So nothing's changed with this edition. It's the same words and everything. It's just packaged differently. And then it has a sample of someone else's book in the back, because that's what they do with paperbacks. And officially, this will be my last printed book from Orbit. My, for the time being, anyway. So yeah, the cap end of an era. I feel very emotional about this. It has, for me, it's been a decade of being an author. So kind of closing that out in a strange way in 2020 is sort of symbolic for me, and this is the book that will do it. So if you've been waiting for the paperback, now is your time, or soon is your time. I just got my shipment, so that's why I have one to show you guys. For those of you who don't know how the traditional book industry works, when you sign a contract with a publisher, you sign for them to give you a certain number of copies. So, and then they ship them to you as soon as they're printed, and so they arrive usually before the book actually releases. I'm drinking tea out of a mug today because I'm at home, and while I do have proper teacups in my apartment, none of them are blue, so they don't match my look. And of course I'm wearing blue because Meet Cute is coming out, and I actually was prepared to have the cover art of Meet Cute, and then of course things went pear-shaped. But there it is. Yay! Meet Cute. See? Blue. Blue. Right? Have to dress to match the book. After Meet Cute, that's in February. In May, and I haven't said the actual date yet, but I have picked it. I just haven't named the date or anything else super official yet for Defy or Defend, because as soon as I mention it, people start filling in the assets on Goodreads, and then they get it wrong, and I have to like go through this rigmarole to get it all fixed. So that's why I'm cagey about it. I know it's a strange reason, but that's why I'm cagey about it. So Defy or Defend is going to come out in May. That is Dimity's book, so it is in the Delightfully Deadly novella line, so it follows Poison or Protect, basically, but it features Dimity as the main character. Prussia doesn't show up in it at all. It's a spoof on a makeover story, so it's a parody of a makeover story, and unlike Romancing the Werewolf, Defy or Defend is actually long for a novella for me, so you're going to get a little bit more than you might be used to with Defy or Defend. So I hope you're excited about that one. It is particularly ridiculous. I think it's a real return to form for me in terms of comedic value. Like it's right back there with Soulless. Like it's very funny and absurd. And it's a little bit, there is a romance, but it's lighter on the romance. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that one. And if you're a member of the Chirp, which is my newsletter, the next Chirp that comes out at the beginning of February is going to have a sneak peek of the cover in it. So, yay, cover art. So much fun. So that's May. That's my spring release. I don't yet know what I'm gonna do in the summer. For those of you who aren't familiar with the cycle, I usually try and release something in the spring, something in the fall, and then something in the summertime. So I usually try to do 3 releases of something. So right now I have a couple of things that I might do in the summertime, including my nonfiction book or like a collection, a couple of ideas for the summer. I haven't figured it out yet because I'm kind of waiting on a conversation with my agent. And then the fall release this year, probably November, not sure, but that's probably when it will be, is The Enforcer Enigma, which is the 3rd San Andreas book. Enforcer Enigma, I'm writing right now. So committing to having a book I'm currently writing come out in the fall is actually a big deal for me. Oh, how far I have come from my baby trad roots where you would write a book and it wouldn't come out for 2 years. So, yeah. So those are the release plans for 2020 for me. I hope you're excited. I'm pretty thrilled. Of course, those aren't the books I'm actually writing. I'm actually writing, aside from The Enforcer Enigma, I will probably be writing the 3rd book in the Delightfully Deadly series, so the book that follows Dimity's. And I'm not going to tell you yet whose book that is, but I think you'll be happy with it. And I don't know what else I'm planning on writing. I upped how many writing retreats I'm doing this year, and that's because I have a question about 5th gender. I'm not sure. Like, I really don't know what the other thing I might be writing this year is going to be. And that's because I've upped the number of writing retreats I do, which means I hopefully can write a little bit more. The more writing retreats I do, the more I write. So, fingers crossed. But generally speaking, I'm trying not to limit myself this year. It's kind of one of my goals. I am trying not to say the word I can't. But experience has shown me that anything more than 3 things a year is hard for me to write. And things can be books or novellas or short stories. That doesn't mean I can't. It just means that I haven't been able to in the past, and I never want to burn out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So those are my writing plans, lots of retreats, less travel as a result of all of those retreats to see you guys. So less like events and conventions and more traveling in order to just be in a house with a bunch of writers and write. I figured you guys would rather see me like this than in person if it meant that you got to have more books, right? I hope that's right. That's my guess anyway. Speaking of which, another thing I'm going to try and do is more mini videos. So I usually do meet with my fellow authors on Tuesdays. So I put the get up on and I put on the makeup and I'm all like proper Gail. So I'm hoping to maybe do Tuesday drop-ins, which would be like just a tiny little video where I tell you what I'm excited about or something that's going on in my life as a writer. So we'll see. If I'm not making any promises, but I'm going to try and do that. So yeah, sort of accountability. Try and stay in touch with you. Now moving on, what am I wearing? People will often ask. I am wearing a vintage dress, which I've worn for lives before. My usual turban, the velvet turban that comes off of Amazon. And today I'm doing Maybelline Matte Ink in Pioneer. I don't wear this one very much because it does come off if I eat greasy food. I tend to like a color stay, but I love the color. And I was just going to talk to you today. Book usually comes on and asks me what I did this morning, because some of you know that I only put makeup on and get all dressed up for a live if I have something else going on, a meeting or whatever. But I actually just skipped my meeting this morning, so I'm all gussied up just for you. Aren't you special and lucky? Rightio. Look what I did. I printed out my goals for you. So I picked a bunch of like goals and things that I thought maybe would interest you. I don't know. How nosy are you? Who cares? Probably pretty nosy if you're watching a random author talk. Right, so I have like business goals and health goals and relationship goals. So I also like try and pick a motto for every new year. I am a goal-oriented person. I always try and pick SMART goals rather than resolutions. I find resolutions are too broad and aspecific for me, so I need to have like targets of things that I can check off. That's like what my personality is, like that. So some of the things I want to do more of. Oh, what's my motto? My motto for 2020 is basically, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. As a sort of a people pleaser, I really struggle to just turn things down and say no, and I get overwhelmed easily if I say I'm going to do something, because if I say I'm going to do something, for me that's like a duty-bound commitment. So my big motto for this year is just, if I'm not like super enthusiastic about a project, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take it on, or an event, or fill in the blank. I've worked hard in the past just to learn to say no, period, especially to events, because they come out of fandom, and the idea that anybody would invite me for a convention is so amazing to me that for a long time early on in my career, I just said yes to everything. And then since I can't write on the road, and I can't write at conventions or when I'm traveling, it really impacts how much I can produce. So learning to say no, now I have to learn to say no if I'm not excited about it. So that's my motto for 2020. And then these are some of the goals that I sort of have set for myself. So one of the things I really want to do is try and publicly celebrate my victories a little bit more, and also thank the people who made those happen. I think especially as a woman, it's hard to be proud of things that I've accomplished, and I should learn to do better, and I would like other women to also do that. So, I believe in leading by example. So like this is a minor victory, but I said I would do it, so I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do one right now, which is ever since I moved out of my old office, I've been having some like minor breathing problems. I think I developed an allergic reaction to like the dust mites or mold or something when I was cleaning. And just this week, I'm finally like breathing really well again. So that's my minor victory. I'm not entirely sure how I accomplished it, but I'm really proud. I think part of it has to do with the fact that one of my health goals is just walking a little bit more every day, 20 minutes, just a little bit more exercise than, like normally I'm a batch exerciser, so I'll like get on the treadmill and exercise for like 3 hours and then not exercise for 3 days. So I'm trying to be better about that. But yeah, so there's my victory. I think I mostly did that on my own, but I have an awesome doctor who helped interface with me about like not breathing great. And so thanks, Doc. Thanks, Dr. Hamlin. You're awesome. So some of my other goals are, and again, like I'm going through these so in the hope that maybe they'll inspire you guys. I have to make an appointment with an estate lawyer this year. Isn't that exciting? I just need to I have a holograph will, but I really need to get an official will. Specifically for me, and if you're a creative, this applies to you as well, you have to think about as a creative what happens to your creative properties. So for example, if I died tomorrow, what would happen to all of the books that I was in the middle of writing? Or what happens to a book that's only in a rough draft phase? Who takes on that mantle? Who can figure out, like, do I need to get another author to finish this? Who are Gail's contract workers? Who, if I want to publish this book, like, who does it go out to? So yeah, so so I need to make an appointment with an estate lawyer and make sure that that's all official, right? I don't really have heirs, but I need to figure that stuff out. The other thing I scheduled is I am insisting to myself that I take what I call a brain break once a month, which is during a work week, I take the entire afternoon, one day a month during the work week when normally I would be writing, to not do anything and not plan anything, not commit to anything, and I can then do what I want with that day. Walk on the beach, do something, but I find that that's just really helpful for me creatively, and I am a workaholic, so I need to be reminded to pause sometimes, and because I'm very rule-bound and I work really well with a schedule, if I just plan it into my calendar for the whole year, then I do it. So I'm gonna do that. I need to get a new phone. I'm recording this Facebook Live on my very old phone, which is an iPhone 5. And the iOS is just being obsoleted out on the 5. So it's just gonna stop working soon. And I need a new phone service. So I'm just a technophobe. I don't like it, so I don't like to deal with it, but it's gonna have to happen this year or I suddenly won't be able to do anything. Yeah, this phone totally failed me when I was in Europe, when I was in Ireland and Scotland last year. Didn't have any phone capacity, so I really need a new phone. Like I mentioned, I'm gonna try and do the little mini videos, and yeah, and I'm gonna, Piper and I are talking about figuring out how to round out 20-minute delay and what that might entail. So for those of you who are fans of our podcast, it's been on hiatus for a while because we've had a really hard time finding a producer for it. Neither of us are really good at audio production, so we do need to hire somebody, and we just keep losing them. So that's what the hiatus has been about. So one way or another, and we have a backlog of a bunch of episodes that just need to be cut together and posted. So one way or another, I'm going to get those settled this year. That's the plan. And then at that juncture, Piper and I will discuss whether we want to continue with the podcast or whether we're going to pod fade it or maybe turn it into something else. So those are my business goals. And then the health goals I already talked about. I can do those really quickly. I'm trying to get 20 minutes of exercise in every day, even that's just walking from my office to get food or what have you. A couple of sessions of yoga. I've done yoga since I was a teenager in one form or another, and I really enjoy it. It's one of the only times I really think about flexibility and stretching and stuff. And as a writer, obviously, I'm like sitting all the time, so I need to think about my body. Speaking of which, I'm doing some pain management stuff. Some of my arm issues are coming back. That's, no fun to complain about, but there it is. And then I've also been doing intermittent fasting. I don't know if you guys are into that kind of thing. I find that really works for me. So I'm enjoying that, and I'd like to keep that up. So intermittent fasting just means you have breakfast a little bit later on in the day, and you have dinner a little bit earlier on in the day, so there's a longer period of time when you're just not eating anything at all. And it's not that I'm like weight self-conscious or anything. I just find I tend to snack on really unhealthy things in the evenings. So I don't need to do that. I'm not hungry. I don't need the chocolate bar. I just eat the chocolate bar. So So yeah, so intermittent fasting works for me. Other diets I've never had much success with. So although one of my other goals for this year is when I am eating out, and I eat out a lot, it's one of my big indulgences, I have to say. I'm gonna try to order healthier things, and for me, healthier means lots of vegetables, and if there's a protein, either a vegetable-based protein or fish. So just like if I'm having Thai food, go for salmon or prawns or something rather than for red meat or chicken or anything. So yeah, so those are my health goals, and then I have some relationship stuff. I'm gonna, as in like things to do with friends. I'm trying to organize a high tea with some of my girlfriends, and I want to go see an exhibit that's happening at one of the local museums. So I just have a few of those sorts of things. I've kind of let my friends slide, in addition to some other stuff, as I've been a workaholic for the last 10 years, and it's time for me to kind of re-examine the state of my relationships. I feel, I guess, a little isolated, and I want to kind of reconnect. Part of that was conscious. A lot of my friends have little kids. I'm not great with little kids, so, and frankly, they're not very interesting with little kids because you're distracted by the kids, which is totally fair. But now those kids are starting to get older, starting to get a little bit more independent, so I feel like it's time to kind of reconnect with some of my older friends. So that's what I'm hoping to do in 2020. Not like life-changing or anything, but well, hopefully just designed to give me more balance, I guess. Make sure that the time I do have, I spend a little bit more thoughtfully on the people and things that I genuinely love. So there it is. Now, would anybody like to ask questions? Doc is recommending renting a child. Do they make robot ones? I could maybe handle a robot. Does my cat count? I would totally take Lilibet to visit people. She'd love it. She's a really social cat. Even though I am home, she's not in the room before you ask. She's exiled. She gets a little yappy if she's... And I have to have the door closed so the noise doesn't come in. So I know we had some questions. I saw one flip up that I think was like beginning writer question. Maybe, what was the... Getting rejected early on in my career or something like that? Catherine wants to know... Oh, speaking of the cat, there she was. We're getting questions thick and fast. All right. Catherine wants to know, what do I like to eat while I'm writing? So I'm always drinking tea. So usually I'm an afternoon writer, so I tend to write from about 2 to 6 or later, depending on whether the words are flowing or not. So sometimes my writing goes over dinner. The only thing I will stop for is food. But generally speaking, I tend to have tea, and because of my British mother, I will have a biscuit with tea. It's really hard for me to turn down that 3 o'clock treat, for lack of a better word. So I try to stick to, I have a teaching aid. I try to stick to something like a penguin, which is like a Tim Tam. It's just like a little chocolatey biscuit that's exactly big enough and satisfying enough for me to feel like I was slightly spoiled without being too bad. So that's what I eat when I'm writing. Rosalind wants to know about my feelings on the RWA kerfuffle. It is generally not my place to speak on it. I'm not profoundly affected by this. So, I kind of have been... my feeling is that others are better equipped to discuss this and present on it and talk about it than I am. So I've just been taking a back seat and watching to see what happens. And I hope it can be solved one way or another. For me, RWA has been... My local chapter is very progressive. It's very integrated. It's very queer friendly. And so I've been really happy with my local chapter. And I would be really, really sad to lose those friendships and like powerful female authors that I encounter there. And so personally, I hope that if the institution dissolves, which it might, that my chapter can hold it together and we can reform, and at least locally. So for a personal impact, that's all. For those of you who aren't involved in the RWA world, it is a not dissimilar thing, sad puppy situation. So that's the other situation. Is for me, I went through this with the sad puppies in Sefwa, and this is real insider trading, guys. I'm sorry, but that was very traumatic for me, like profoundly psychologically impactful, and I left Sefwa because of it. And so I'm trying not to be as over emotional and reactive as I was with that situation. So I'm also trying to be more graceful in how I react to what's going on. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. Doc suggests rent a dog for visiting my friends. That's a very good idea. I do love dogs, and I can't have one, so. Balance is good, Clay. Thank you. Ty wants to know if I were to write a fanfic alternate universe of any of the Parasols, what would the AU be and who would it star? What's AU? I can't use like super geeky fan speak with me. I'm not that good. AU. Ty, redo your question. If I were to write fanfic, I freaking don't know. Don't I write fanfic? Isn't that what I write already? I write my own fanfic. Sally wants to know if I'm going to Worldcon this year. So Worldcon is in New Zealand, in Wellington, and I really would have liked to go, but unfortunately I can't go this year. I just can't afford it, and it's such a long way to go. And Wellington is one of the only places in New Zealand I have not spent much time, and I was really looking forward to it. But sadly, it's not going to happen this year. I will definitely be at Worldcon next year in 2021, and it's in Washington, D.C. next year. At least definitely being, barring health issues or anything. Ooh, and the comments are frozen. Yay! Oh, here we go. Doc wants to know what genre would I not want to write in? And when am I going to try it? Gosh. Well, literary fiction, does that count as genre? That's not really a genre, is it? Like non-genre. Horror, like straight up proper horror. I don't like being creeped out, and I don't like gory stuff either. So horror is probably, like, I can write something a little surreal, but I tend to go straight to humor. I mean, there's a fine line between scaring someone and making them laugh. But yeah, I think horror is probably the one that, maybe noir. Noir might leak in there a little bit. And yeah, and the hero's journey, if that counts. I'm not sure if it does. Other people do tea and treats. Excellent. Jane would like to ask about manuscript rejections before I got my first publication. So, yes, Soulless was not rejected very much. It got several offers out the gate. That, however, was not my first book. I have, the usual number of trunk books. So maybe half a dozen that I tried submitting. Tons of short stories that I tried submitting for years and years and years. So like Madeline L. Ingle said, I could probably paper my office with my rejection slips. So yeah, I did get a lot of manuscript rejections, but not for Soulless, which was my debut book. When it went off to editors and when it went off on submission, a lot of people were interested in it, or a handful of people were interested in it. And that, I think that goes to show something about the traditional publishing world, which is there is a sense of what might sell, and often a book gets interest because people think it's going to sell more than anything else. And they weren't sure that Soulless would be the breakout hit that it was, but I think they kind of knew that the world was eager for something sort of steampunk and something lighthearted. And that's just because that's the industry, right? So when you're out there submitting, if you are submitting to traditional publishers and you're getting rejected, it most of the time doesn't say anything about the quality of the book. It's just that they don't think it's going to sell well. And sometimes they have a great handle on the market, and sometimes they have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, J.K. Rowling got rejected forever. Madeleine L'Engle got rejected forever. So you never know. But yes. So yeah, I have a ton of rejections until I wrote the right book for my voice and the right book for the time that I was querying publishers. And I still get rejections. I mean, I talked about this in a previous live. Here I am. I've got all of my young adult were New York Times and USA Today and blah, blah, blah bestsellers, and a lot of my adult stuff. And I still will submit a proposal or talk to my editor and get rejected. I mean, my agent called whatever the mess was, and it was a mess that I submitted recently, a hot mess. And it was like, yeah, we can't do anything with this. And I was like, that's fair. So, so yeah, you still get rejected. This is the great secret, of course. Even if you're wildly successful or whatever, you can still collect rejections. Isn't that fun? Yay, your future is bright. Natalie wants to know how a historian... so Natalie kind of wants to know how a historian would deal with the fact that they could have access to primary sources, so vampires, when talking about the past. And there's actually a line in one of my Parasolverse books where a vampire is killed, and the great regret is all of the primary historical knowledge that dies with that vampire. However, exactly as historians should be suspicious of primary source written documentation, historians are going to have to be suspicious of primary source spoken documentation when they're interviewing vampires, for example. First of all, they have to get an interview with a vampire, and I'm sure vampires get exhausted by talking about the past all the time. But it is going to be a biased opinion. So I think it would be treated too dissimilarly from the way a good historian treats current day historical primary documentation, which is to say, with a great deal of salt and realizing that to the victor go the spoils and the narrative. Doc wants to know what happened. With the RWA thing, it's too complicated. You can Google RWA kerfuffle or what have you and figure it out. Alternate universe. Sorry. So Ty's question was, what character and what alternate universe? Yeah, I don't know that, like, I'm sorry, Ty, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know that I would. Like, I'm pretty happy in my own universe, and I'm pretty happy picking up and playing with whatever character I want to. If you ask me other people's universes, it's a whole different discussion. Oh, okay, so like high school or... Yeah, I always have crazy ideas on, like, one of the reasons I started writing the San Andreas books was because I wanted to play with shifter characters in mundane situations, like mundane for the modern world situations. So the Enforcer Enigma, which I'm writing right now, opens in a cafe because I spend a lot of time in cafes, and so does Colin, as it turns out, because he's a student. So, and it's really fun. Like, how does a cafe cater to the drinks that shifters might want? Or how do shifters order drinks? Like, you know, like if you're a wolf shifter, you're not going to want chocolate or caffeine. So, like, what kind of drink do you order at a cafe, right? These are like the mundane things that entertain and interest me. So, yeah, essentially, if I want to do it, I'll figure out a way to do it. Don't really need to have a hypothesis about it. Oda wants to know, I'm sorry, Oda, if I pronounced your name wrong, if I had to choose, would I want to go to El Dorado or Atlantis? Atlantis, especially if it's sunken and somehow I get to have gills and go on. Like, I love being underneath the water, and so, yeah. My shifter creature is definitely merfolk of some kind. So, you know, Selkie or something along those lines of a new shifter character in the Enforcer Enigma who is probably the shifter closest to my personal little heart. And it involves water. I love swimming. I love being in the water. So, Atlantis, without question. And he wants to know if I have retro yoga wear. No, my yoga wear is very boring. Since I'm usually gonna put like a retro dress over it and just kind of use the yoga pants like leggings or what have you, it's just black. Sorry to disappoint. Catherine has a reason to go to DC in 2021. Yay! I hope many of you have reasons to go to DC in 2021. My experience with DC fandom has been extremely positive, and DC is good for conventions. It should be, and it is. So I've never had a bad convention in the DC area. So I'm looking forward to Worldcon in 2021. Yeah, Doc is making a joke about what kind of horror I would write if I wrote. Like, my horror would be like, oh no, there's no tea left in the house. Ah, what will we do? That's my version of horror. Question from Alexia. Hi, Alexia. Do I have a P.O. box where you can send fan mail? They've been thinking about sending me something crocheted. Oh, that would be lovely. I don't. I have a mailing address for my office, which I'm comfortable generally giving out. And if you want to drop me a calling card, I will talk about that. Or if you, or you can mail it to my agent, and she sends stuff along to me occasionally. Everybody's being very kind and polite. People are talking about discovering and reading Soulless. Dick asks a very interesting question. Looking back on my earlier reactions, so like my earlier stuff, are they worth considering publishing indie? So I have a kind of YA fantasy that has a very, I think, fun magical system and unique and interesting. And, but the book itself isn't really salvageable, so I'd have to just write something else in that universe. And definitely, if I ever get super fatigued by the Parasolverse, I might go back and revisit that universe and then write stuff in it, applying the lessons that I've learned now as an author of a decade now. And probably those would be indie. There's a couple of short stories that I might resurrect and put out, but by and large, the stuff that was rejected for very good reasons. It was flawed, profoundly flawed, and either would take too much effort for me to fix it to an extent that means I would just rewrite it if I were going to write it, or is so disingenuous to my own voice as an author that it just wouldn't be worth me putting it out into the world. Too dark, too depressing, or something else along those lines. So, yeah. Cal says that they're a new fan who's currently reading Blameless. Welcome to the fold! I think you're asking if we will ever see it brought to the silver screen, which is a not uncommon question. It's actually FAQ number 3, I think, on my website. So it was optioned for a while. So a book option is for the rights to the world and the characters, not the story, which I always have to remind people. In fact, if you'd like to Google "an option does not a movie make," I talk all about what it's like to be optioned and why it's hard to get a movie made now more than ever, even with the wide open field. My stuff is very expensive to produce because it is historically based, which means costume. It is remote location based, London, or which is Budapest, I think these days. That's where they film for London. And it has CGI because it has shifting creatures and dirigibles and stuff. So it's a very expensive property to make. So there's a lot against a film of anything set in the Parasolverse. All of that said, I do have an agent. She is shopping it. She is looking at animation, which I think would be really fun. But I don't know anything, and there haven't been any major nibbles recently. The original option lapsed, so they renewed it a couple of times and then it lapsed. So that's where that is. I'm not really fussed. I mean, Hollywood would be nice, but I'm not one of those authors who always wanted to be a screenwriter or anything like Incidentally, Ty has shared the RWA timeline crisis that I was alluding to earlier as a comment on the Facebook Live feed, so you can go check it out via that link. Brittany wants to know about my earrings. Oh, these are vintage. They're actually clip earrings that I've converted to hang because I don't like clip earrings very much. I think these are transition Art Nouveau to Art Moderne, so I'm thinking early 1950s. And yeah, they're asymmetrical. You probably can't really see it, but they match, but they're not exactly the same design. And they are some designer who has a name that my best friend knows, and I have forgotten. I should write it down and keep it with the earrings. I just don't wear them that very often, and I thought I'd just put them on for the live because they're fun. Everybody's ready for DC Worldcon. Me too, me too. Scrolling, 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 looking for the questions. Ty says that they want me to write dark and depressing stuff. Oy vey, isn't there enough of it? I always feel like there's enough dark, depressing fiction out there in the world. I also feel like if you're gonna write something darker, you just have to massage your prose so much. Dark stuff can get overworked really easily. At least I feel that way about fiction. I don't read that much dark stuff, so maybe I'm talking out of my... Yay! People are talking about things that they're reading and what they're going to read this year. I hope you guys have awesome reading goals for 2020. I have a few of those as well. Didn't have time to talk about them, but maybe we'll talk about them in another live. Katie wants to know if I like to cook. And that they're very happy with their electric pressure cooker. So yeah, we have an Instapot in my household, and it was a big decision because I have a tiny apartment. The AB and I live in 600 square feet or slightly less. Old Vic, little bitty apartment. So we have a galley kitchen. It is tiny. So getting an Instapot and making room for it was a huge decision, and we love it. I use it all the time. I use stews. I do love to cook. However, I don't always have the time to cook these days. I also like to bake. I like to experimentally cook and bake. I will find a recipe and then tinker with it, try and make it healthier or more to my taste. AB has some medical stuff that makes some cooking difficult. So yeah, but I like to cook very much. I'm just don't do it as much as I used to in the bad old days. I used to cook regularly on Fridays for all of my friends. So back in like the post-college days, I lived on a farm, kind of a subsistence living situation. And so I would just make big casseroles. Casseroles are a great way to feed a lot of people cheaply, full of vegetables that I would harvest off of the farm and just invite my friends over just to make sure that they all got a solid meal, a solid home-cooked meal once a month. But that was way back in the old days. Emma wants to know, for the Dimity book, can I give any hints about what food you'll be craving when you read it? Oh shoot, did I put a food craving into it? Maybe. I'm trying to remember. It is, so the Dimity book is vampire oriented, so you actually get to go like really into a hive in that book. So there's a lot of blood. So blood is the food of choice. I don't know, maybe you'll be craving blood sausage out the other end of it. Annie has a wish list that is a collection of non-traditional holiday stories featuring the shifters. I have thought about that. So in Omega Objection, I think there's a little allusion to the fact that Alec has third form, so he has an Anubis form, essentially. Alec is the alpha of the San Andreas shifter pack, who's married to or partnered with a merman. But Alec uses his third form to scare children on Halloween. He puts it on, like, that's really the only time he uses it. So, so yeah, I would love to write if I had the bandwidth, and like frankly the success of the audiobook of Meet Cute has kind of opened my eyes a little bit, so I might do more of these, but I don't know. But if I have the bandwidth, I'd love to write shorter stuff that's like interstitial peeks into what goes on with both the Parasol Protectorate verse, or the Parasolverse, and the San Andreas verse, and how they handle different kinds of holidays and stuff. So like, what's Christmas like at the Pack House, for example? Or what was Christmas like with Alexia and Lord Maccon and Lord Aquildama and Rue, when Rue is like a sullen, bratty teenager, and the whole pack? Or what's, you know, like what's Beltane like for all of the werewolves in London, with Biffy and Lyle? Like, those are questions that I entertain myself thinking about, so it would be fun. But I don't have enough plot for like a full story, so it would have to be just a little scenes from X house during X time of year. But I just, you know me, I've just nothing but ideas, really. So Doc just said that they would like to see a series that skips around and visits the history of different time periods. And there's a couple of Delightfully Deadly books that I envision would do that. So I tend to progress linearly rather than the Odysseus jump around, or like they're doing with Witcher. So my approach would be a long span book that snippet visits one character at different points during an extensive period of time. And I have a mini plan for that as one of the Delightfully Deadly books. Oh, Facebook's pausing the comments again, so I'll take a moment to have some tea. It's look like we've only got 8 minutes left, so no more questions, please, and I will try to blow through the last ones. Jessa wants a Parasolverse cookbook. The odds on us getting that are really, really slim. I tried it once already. I had a whole contract in place and everything. It was super expensive to get it all together, and nothing happened. It fizzled, and the person who was supposed to be doing it kind of disappeared off the map. So it was a big loss all around. So the cookbook is pretty unlikely, although I would love to do something like that. However, I do have secret plots in mind for something kind of similar, but not exactly that. People are excited that I am dissing dark and depressing fiction. Yes, it's not something I read. It's not something I write. I figure there's enough of it, so I don't want to add any of that into the universe. There's a discussion of deep fryers. The one thing I do not cook is fried food. Pretty much ever at all. If I want fried food, I'm going to have to go out and find it and buy it from somebody else. Yeah, I just don't. I try and eat super healthy. I was raised, like hippie, crazy vegetarian, so it influences me, I'm afraid. People are excited about the Instapot. Emma's taking a Jane Austen class this spring. How exciting. That is really cool. Have fun. I'd be interested. I wonder if you have to read all of them. This is just the 6, or, despite, and the unfinished stuff, but I did a Jane, through the course of various studies, the sun is here. Through the course of various studies, I've had to read all of Jane Austen, and I have very definite opinions on which ones I like and which ones I don't. And I've swung around and back, but yeah, Jane Austen. Otis says, I might have answered this in the past, but who's on my dinner list? Oh, people I would invite to dinner. Well, I am an ex-archaeologist, so presuming we all can speak the same language, there are a lot of queens that whose brains I would like to pick. And presuming we would all get along, so it would be like Hatshepsut, perhaps Nefertiti. I would love to know what happened to her and Tutmosis III. Or Akhenaten. And then like Zenobia. Like there are a lot of like historic queens. I wouldn't mind an unnamed ancient Etrurian queen of some kind. I just think it would be fun to pick the brains of powerful female leaders of the past, especially the more ancient past, of which we have very little access or information. Moving along. Oh yes, Ty got very excited about me saying that Alec and Marvin are married. That would be fun. And that's another character that, like, sorry, you just tangentially me in my brain. I do that sometimes. But wouldn't it be fun to see, A, how traditions have evolved in the future, and B, how Triss would react to, like, weird human customs? like weddings. And yeah, I should probably do, like, the pack wedding at some point. You know, Alec and Marvin are gonna get married, and it would be really fun to write that. Maybe it'll end up being in one of the books, or maybe it will be an extra. Big gay werewolf wedding in the backyard. That'd be hilarious. People are excited about the possibility of a holiday short story collection. There's some discussion over epistolary books and writing. I'm sorry about the glare from the light, but we're almost done. I'm just checking to see if we have any other urgent questions. Lauren wants a different discussion than Jane Austen books. Austen is difficult, I understand. Gaskell's even more difficult. I think you have to read her at the right time. It's more, for me, Austen is more like, because she was the start of so many genres. All right, I think we're good. Look at us, nice, tight little live. It's rounding in on an hour. I'm being blinded by the afternoon sun. Jessa says a werewolf barbecue wedding would be a huge barbecue, and there would be so much excitement. Absolutely. But it would be really fun. I mean, I'm from California, so, like, how many weddings have I been to that were barbecues? Pretty much all of them in one form or another. Right. And on that note, I hope you all have, like, awesome fun goals. Pick things for 2020 that are gonna bring, you know, joy and light into your and other people's worlds, please, for me. And share that. Share, like, what's making you happy, what you're reading that you love. And thank you all so much for tuning in and for reading my stuff and for being interested in one strange, quirky author's worldview, and crazy aliens at barbecues with werewolves, or whatever I'm going to be writing next. Happy New Year, everybody, and I'll see you at the next live.